Hi and welcome back. We're in the middle of our second project in our Introduction to Dreamweaver series. And this is the website that we're going to go ahead and create, the fictitious sample website. You can see it here. And so far what we've done in our project is we've gone ahead and we've laid out the HTML structure and added some content to our basic page. And if I go into code view here, you'll see where we're basically at. Now, the next step in this design is going to be actually laying out the CSS for the page. And the first thing you need to make sure, in your HTML code, you're going to want to make sure that we have a link to our style sheet. And you can see here in our files, I'm going to come back into my project folder here. And inside of my project folder, I should have a folder for CSS, and I should have a file called styles.css. When I open that on up, you're going to see it's just a blank document. So you could just simply right-click here and do New File if you don't have the framework, and name it styles.css. When we come back in here to the source code, you're going to need to make sure that you have a link to that CSS file from your HTML. And the code for that is actually right here. And I'm going to scroll over just a little bit so you can see the whole line here. You'll see it's a link tag. The href is pointing to the CSS folder, and it's saying inside of that CSS folder you're going to find a file called styles.css. The relationship between these two files, between the HTML and this item right here, is that the linked file is a style sheet, and the type of style sheet it is text.css, and the type of media that should use this style sheet are screens. So we have a link here to our style sheet from our HTML page. And again, if you've set this up correctly, you should see up here in the related files area in Dreamweaver, you do have an option to go into our styles.css, which again is empty. That makes it very easy to switch back and forth. If you don't see styles.css here, and you have created the link and it appears exactly as it is here, and you actually have a file here in your CSS folder called styles.css, again, it should appear here. If not, you can just go ahead and close that out and then reopen the file, and it should appear here in the top. Now, just as we went into our framework and went ahead and grabbed some boilerplate HTML to act as a starting point for our design, we're going to do the same thing with our CSS. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here into Files, I'm going to click my drop down, and I'm going to go into my framework again. And when I'm inside of my framework, you're going to see there's a folder called CSS. And just as before we went into the HTML folder and grabbed the HTML out of basic.html, here we're going to go into basic.css and we're going to grab that boilerplate CSS from that file. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that right there. You can see all the code there. Goes all the way down. And I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit, Select All, and then Edit Copy to copy all of that. Come back into my HTML page, select styles.css, and then go to Edit and Paste. And again, if you don't have the framework, you're going to be able to type the styles in as we create them, or I'll give you instructions for that. You don't have to worry about typing all this in initially. But this does give you a really great starting point for your CSS. And the advantage of using that style sheet is that not only does it give you a base starting point for all of your other styles, the containers here map to the containers that we used actually in the template right here. So that'll save you a little bit of time as well. So coming back in here to my styles.css sheet. That's all you need to do to copy that information over. Now, the first item that we want to go ahead and take a look with in our style sheet is going to be this section here below the reset comment. And all this is my CSS reset. It goes all the way down here to the global area. Now, what a CSS reset is it gives you a uniform starting place in all the different browsers. Unfortunately, the different browsers, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, they all start you off at a somewhat different place because the browsers have different defaults. And again, what this reset does is it sort of makes that starting place for all the browsers the same. And lots of people have created a reset. Again, I have one in my framework that I'm going to go ahead and use here. But there's lots of them that you can go ahead and take a look at. For example, if you go to Google and type in CSS reset, quite a few will come up. There's a very popular one called the Eric Meyer reset. And Yahoo also has a popular reset. So you can go ahead and either grab one of those off of Google, or you can see mine right here, and you could just go ahead and type in this information. And actually there's a little bit more information over there. Let me scroll over so you can see the rest of that line there. But that's all there is to a CSS reset. And again, that gives you a uniform starting place for all the browsers so that you aren't trying to space things out and make everything look uniform when you have an uneven foundation to work on. So the first thing that you're going to need is your CSS reset. Now after that, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our container styles. And again, the advantage of using this style sheet, the basic.css, is that the styles for the containers, and if I scroll down here, you're going to see the container section. The containers that are listed here map or match the containers that we actually used in our HTML. You'll see the IDs here will begin to match selectors in this style sheet. Now, just as we needed to go ahead and customize our HTML containers, we need to go ahead and do that same thing with our styles right here. And if we go into our source code, you can see the first few divs are wrapper, top, and slider. Wrapper, top, and slider. And if I go into my CSS, we're going to see wrapper, we're going to see top, but we don't see a slider div. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that one on in there really quickly. Tab myself over and do my opening and closing brackets. And then I'm going to come into my source code here, and then after slider we have banner, top nav, and sub banner. And it looks like I need to go ahead and tab that over there a little bit to even things out. So we have banner, top nav, and sub banner. And when we go into our style sheet, we see banner and sub banner and top nav right here. They're in a slightly different order, so you can just go ahead and drag that up there if you wanted to and reorient that. So it'll be a banner, top nav, and sub banner. So those match right here. And then after that, we're going to have content, bottom banner, and footer. I'm going to come back into my style sheet, and we've got content wrapper, left nav, left side, right side. We don't need any of those, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete those right there. Whoops. Go ahead and delete all those right there. And then we have content and footer. The one thing that we're missing here is this bottom banner ID. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that ID, come back into my styles, click to the right of the content, and then I'm going to go ahead and do bottom banner just by pasting that in. So now we're going to have a matching selector for each one of the divs that we've used inside of our HTML. And you can go ahead and also type these boxes in if you want. We're going to play around with those a little bit later, but we won't need them for right now. The important part is this right here, that you have a selector for each one of your divs. Now, the first thing we want to do, or the first style that we want to set up, is going to be the style for the wrapper here. And remember, the wrapper in our design is the container that contains all of the other divs. You can see the opening and closing divs for that wrapper. So the wrapper contains everything that we're going to place on the page. And if we go ahead and look at our finished design here, you're going to see a couple things that we need to set. The first thing we need to do is we need to set the width of the design. And the width of the overall design is going to be 900 pixels, and that's the same as these images that we're going ahead and using here. So we need to set the width of the wrapper for 900. We also need to set the top and bottom and left and right margins for the design. The top and bottom margins, as you can see here, are going to be 0. The left and the right margins, we actually want to center the design. So we want to tell the browser to automatically space the left and the right out for us. That'll center our design in most browsers, not IE, but most browsers. And we'll show you how to do IE also in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that, come back in here. I'm going to come back into my style sheet. And there is my wrapper selector. I'm going to go ahead and click inside of the brackets. And first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is set the width of this design to be 900 pixels. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the margin. Now you'll remember the margin property can have anywhere between 1 and 4 values inside of it. If I go ahead and type 10, 20, 30, 40 here, and I have 4 values, that would be top, right, bottom, and left. Remember, it's just clockwise around a clock in your design. Top, right, bottom, left. And I left the pixel off of here, but you get the point. So 4 values would let you specify each one of the sides of the container. If I just did 2 values, the first value is going to be the top and the bottom, and the second value would be the left and the right. If I just did 1 value, the 1 value is going to be the top, bottom, left, and right. They're all going to be uniform. So in our case, we want 0 pixels for the top and the bottom, and we want the browser to automatically balance the left and the right so that the design is centered. So the value that I'm going to go ahead and place in here is going to be 0 pixels and auto. 0 and auto. And I'll save that, and we go ahead and come back into design view here. You'll see just in plain old design view how the width is now been constrained into 900 pixels. And if I actually look at it in live view or preview it in a browser, you'll see that the design is centered. So for example, if I come here and select Chrome, you'll see that that's going to be centered inside of Chrome. I'm going to go ahead and select that and say Save Yes. And there I have the design in Chrome, and you'll see it's centered. Close that, and I do want to leave open my finished item there, so I'm just going to minimize that. Now the problem, as it often does, comes with Internet Explorer. If I click right here and select Internet Explorer and bring the page up, you're going to see that the design is not centered on the page. So IE is giving us a little bit of a problem here that we need to correct. And the way you center the design on the page in IE is you go back into your style sheet And I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and in the body style, or you can just go ahead and type in a body style here, you need to do text align center. And that's an awfully strange command to use to center the page instead of text, but it's the way you have to do it inside of IE. And now if I go ahead and save that, and whenever before we preview something, you're always going to go ahead and save that. But now if I go ahead and open this up in Internet Explorer, you'll see that the design is now centered on the page. Unfortunately, that brings up a couple of other problems in our design, but we'll go ahead and fix those as they arrive. So we now have the design centered on the page in both Internet Explorer and all the other browsers. The next thing that I want to go ahead and do is set the background color for the page. And that's going to be this light orange color right here. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. And I'm back here in my style sheet. And I'm going to go ahead and find my body style right here. And I'm going to go ahead and set the background color for my page. So the property that I'm going to go ahead and use is going to be background color. And the value that I'm going to go ahead and enter in is FFDECE. And we'll save that. And when I go ahead and preview this in a browser again, like in Chrome, you'll see that we have that background color applied to the page. But it applied it to the entire page. And that means that it also applied it behind all of our content right here. Now, since we haven't set the background color for any of our divs, the default is going to be that those divs are going to be transparent. So you're seeing the background color for the body there in there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close this preview off here. And I'm going to minimize that. And I'm going to come back into my style sheet for my page. I'm going to scroll down until I find the container section. And there is my wrapper right there. I want to go ahead and say the background color for the wrapper, which remember contains all the elements on the page, is going to be white or 3Fs. And now when I go ahead and preview this, you can see that the background color for the content is white, but the background color for the page is going to be that orange. And I'm going to go ahead and close this off, and we can see our finished design here. Now the next thing that we want to go ahead and do in our design is format that top div. And you can see it right here up at the top. There's not much to it. We simply have a full width div that's narrow, it's 12 pixels high, that's filled in with this orange color right here. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that, and I'm going to come back into my design here. If we look at the source code for this, you can see the top div is empty right now. And if we go into styles, obviously there are no styles there. So I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the width for 100% or to 100%. And that means it's going to be 100% of whatever is contained inside. Not 100% of the screen, but 100% of its container, which in this case is the wrapper, which is 900 pixels. And I'm also going to go ahead and set the height of this to 12 pixels. And again, you could play with that value to make it larger or smaller depending on your desires. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the background color also of this. And again, I could use Dreamweaver's color picker here, but I actually know what the color code is that I've selected before, and it is B6 4A23. B6 4A23. So the width is 100%, the height is 12 pixels, and the background color is this shade of orange right there. So I'm going to go ahead and File Save, just save my changes. And I'm going to come back in here to Design View, and you're going to see I now have that orange div up there at the top. If you can't see your orange div, just go ahead, and you're probably in Live View. Go ahead and toggle in and out of Live View, and it should refresh the screen. Or just go ahead and preview it in a browser, and that div should appear for you there. So now we formatted that. Now the next thing in this design is this slider area right here with this image. And we're actually going to do the jQuery slider in a later video. Right now we're just concerned with the CSS. So we've just placed an image there to sort of hold the place. That'll work for us right now. And then below that we actually have our title bar. So far we're looking pretty good here. We've got our top div, we have an image right there, and then we have a title bar. But down below that we have this top nav right here. And that's the next thing that we're going to go ahead and format in this design, the top nav.